triangular configurations. I mean, there's no symbolism intended in these.
Oh, quite a bit of
Yeah, that's what I
symbolism.
was getting at.
And,
Yeah.
yeah, I was just trying to equate it with what you were thinking about previously. But no, there's a lot of similar. And it comes from a combination of East and West again. You know, I'm using the yantra concept of the yantra, where their sound becomes form.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what these pieces are really about. But I'm also thinking of Jorge Luis Borges and some of his incredible view of the universe, you know, through a little sphere of glass.
Okay.
You know, in one of his essays, as he's walking down the stairs, he looks back and he looks in there, and there's this entire universe. And so some of that was translated into this. So I'm combining this kind of strange bicultural experience of East and West and South.
And now we get to see some of your very intricate, lacy glasswork, again, through flame working, right?
Yeah, I finally got there. You
Is
know,
this what
I
you were looking for all
finally
along?
got there. Yes. And so I did an entire, I don't know if you have the image of that, but I did an entire, this is part of that series, again, on E-Shell, because she was the first weaver of the Americas. These pieces were a year long. It took me to make these pieces. And it was actually about the mythology of the E-Shell. And I don't know if you have any more of them
I think we do.
up here, so I can
We have
explain.
those.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's
So
start
these
with
pieces, yeah, are very intricately woven, and I really had to learn about armature in building these. And the armature has to be made out of pretty much just a little bit bigger glass. You know, you can't really make it out of thick glass because it'll start cracking. So you have an armature that's moving, and then a flame that's moving, and you're trying to catch the glass to fuse it together and make this armature while you're building it. So you're building an armature, which is like a cube, and you have to do it at different stages. And then I build it like a little bit like a basket, like you build it in the Southwest. You start with like a spider web at the bottom and build out. But the thing that's unique to my particular kind of flame working is that I started doing it in layers, in many, many layers. So I'm actually weaving inside the layers. So the circle is about that big. And then you have several layers coming through that you're weaving in and out of. So it makes it incredibly dense and strong. So that was the beginning of learning how to engineer these pieces. And the one on the right is the culmination of this series and the E-Shell series. And it's called tejido, and these are all called tejidos, meaning weavings. And it's 54 inches wide and about 40 inches high, or 37. And it was the first time I'd had an experience. Actually, it was shown in Austin. This whole body of work was shown in Austin. Part of it was shown at the Laguna Gloria. But trying to pack this, I had never had any experience in packing this. The box was,
Handle with
no
care.
idea. I actually walked into the box, literally walked into
Right.
the box, and you can imagine how many peanuts I had to deal with it. So once I did that, I learned that what I needed to do was take the wings off, ship, or part of, the 2 top wings or 4 top wings, ship it, and then at
Reassemble
the
it.
gallery reassemble it right then and there. So I learned a lot from that. And the story is that E-Shell was married to the son, Hunab Ku, and he became jealous, thinking that she and Venus were having an affair, which may have been the case. But he decided to go after her, and so she thought, well, I'm not going to deal with this. So she came to Earth and took the form of crab. And, of course, that's lunar. So this is all in the mythology, but somehow it all ends up in a particular calendar, which is very uncanny. But so she takes the form of crab to protect herself. And then he hears from a flea that's on a deer that she's taken the form of crab. So he comes in, and so he ends up taking the form of a deer and crushes her. And she's laying there completely crushed. And all the insects become attuned to what is going on. So they tell, or sonically, they get information out to all the dragonflies. So 100,000 dragonflies come over and hover over her for 13 moons. And she then emerges whole, except for one eye, which is, she's blind in one eye. And so what happened then is that she felt that she had a great responsibility to women and healing women. So she ended up taking her position back in the sky as the lunar goddess, and the sun was the sun. And the story goes that whenever the sun would come anywhere near her, she would turn. So that was the phases of the moon. So she was the first battered woman of the Americas, the first weaver and the first battered woman of the Americas.
Wow. And this installation?
This was a residency I did in Brooklyn at Urban Glass for 6 months. I think the residency was like for 2.5 weeks or something.
So how did it turn into 6 months?
Well, because I was making this sphere.
Yes.
And I wasn't bothering anybody, so
They let you stay.
they just let me stay there and weave, Yeah, it was a wonderful experience there, really wonderful experience. And this piece was a collaboration with Joyce Scott,
Wonderful African-American
who
artist.
is
Yes.
absolutely incredible. And we had met when we were both teaching at Penland School of Craft. And we thought, oh, wouldn't it be fun to kind of combine what we do, Well, the thing about it is that she could only come down for a day or so on the weekends. And it was impossible with her beadwork and my weaving. We would have had to be somewhere for a year in order to be able to actually combine it. So what she ended up doing is doing her work, and I did my work, and it was quite beautiful because it was hanging and together in the same large room. But this was the beginning for me of working with the border issues. It was the first one.
And how does this deal with the border issues?
Well, I mean, it works with the wound of the border. For me, it's about the wound, and I feel that coming from Mexico originally and living in Mexico, that I feel I'd like to give something back to Mexico. And so this was the beginning of that. And the weaving of the sphere is called Woven Heaven, Tangled to Earth, which is actually a way that the Mayans perceive the universe, which is a big loom and a loom of light. And it's about weaving with of light and the filaments of light.
Which that actually makes sense in terms of the installation and the missing piece, which we'll get to.
Yeah. And so I've always been very intrigued with light and filaments of light. And me and every person on Earth in the 70s read Don Juan, so Castañeda. So we all know about the filaments of light. And then the Mayans did have shamans that are trained to actually go into other dimensions to work with light. And this is also a culmination of me trying to incorporate some of the dreams I've had around the revelation of light and how it relates to us as human beings and nature itself. And so this piece was about weaving a sphere that was more or less almost like breathing. It's got a sense of breath with the space in there, and like in the Tibetan idea of space and internal space. And the women that are around the cast wax figures, which are also in this Luz y Solidaridad, were the first figures I'd done there with the cast wax figures with the female figure with cloak of tears. And to me, they're weaving a heart in this tree, this shape of heart, and for a new world. So that was kind of what I was thinking in those terms. And the border, you always have this element of darkness, the shadow is important to include. And with this, to me, the shadow is not threatening, but it is with you, and it is conscious. You can step on it, you can look at it, you can talk to it. But anyway, it was the first one dealing with trying to work with the idea of healing on the border.
And these objects?
These were done at the same time at Urban Glass. I had an exhibition come up at the same time at the Maureen Littleton Gallery, so I wanted to do these alchemical vessels. And
now, you've introduced color into these, whereas your early work there wasn't as much color in the glass objects.
On most of the weaving, I don't have a whole lot of color. I'm using a lot more now.
And why was color becoming prominent in this body of work?
Well, I think of alchemy with color. There's a lot of color in alchemy, and the fusion of color, and the fusion of the elements in color. And in the early work of the yantra work that I was telling you about, the Borges combination, there was color there, quite a bit of color. But the blown glass really lends itself to that because you're using these unbelievable color rods, and you're blowing this. So it's, it's a very different material. So it lends itself to, this exquisite color. Yeah.
And what are the content issues in these?
Well, each one represents something else. They're healing vessels, they're alchemical vessels for healing. And I don't know if you're familiar with some of those beautiful drawings they had in, in alchemy of the alchemical vessels. And they all had drawings in them, like the cameo, see? They all had these drawings like as though a cameo was done there. But it was actually a drawing of within the alchemical vessel. So I did the casting separate of the glass. We cast that into an iron mold, and then while that vessel was still hot, we would put it onto the vessel, and it was quite an interesting process. I don't blow glass, but I can pour into the casting, and it's a fascinating, and just. It's alchemical itself, so you're just kind of working within layer. Yeah. And then the one on the right is about heart, of course. It's the flaming heart. And to me, it's also about the Tibetan heart. And also in India, it's the Agni, it's the fire of the heart. Yeah.
And then you returned to Mexico. What year was this? Approximately.
Yeah, I was there from 2000. I went first to 2000, but I moved there in 2002.
And these particular images, are they significant in any way?
Well, they're shrines, and the one on the right is from Hidalgo. We were on a road trip, and it was the most beautiful thing, and it could have been anywhere in India as well, or Tibet, And so I photographed it. I thought it was just incredible. I would like to go down there now and spend more time and photograph some of these incredible roadside shrines. And the one on the left is actually at a botanical garden in San Miguel, which is where I was living recently for 8 years. San Miguel de Allende. Have anybody been there from here? Yeah? This is the botanical gardens. Did you go to the botanical gardens? They're very beautiful. And during ceremonies, celebrations, they'll make these incredible alfombras. They call them alfombras. And they're made out of the palm, the spoon palm. Absolutely just magical, absolutely magical. This is the sacred land of the Chichimeca Indians, and the botanical gardens is. And the Dalai Lama in 2005 made this one of the 100 sites for peace, this beautiful botanical garden. So my interest changed dramatically when I got to Mexico in using more photography and just really dipping into this, magic realism that exists in daily life there.
And these are
And
some
these
of
are
your
some of the
photographs.
photographs of the castillos, which are the fireworks. And they're, they go up to 30 feet high. And these things are just the most amazing structures. And for me, I went during the day. I photographed millions of them at night, when they were the sound and light. And oh my God, it was incredible. But then I just had to go and photograph them during the day because it's very reminiscent to me of some of the aspects of my work. But also,
Certainly the lattice work, yes.
yeah, the lattice work. Yeah, there's an element there that's so great. Oh yeah, this piece I did in Mexico, and it was shown in Seattle at the Traver Gallery, and it was some of the love that I have for nebula and this cosmology.
And we have some shots here that I think will give us a better idea. So
Yeah,
tell us what we're
so
looking at here.
These are nebulae, and the one on the left is glass. I worked with some people there that are stained glass people, artisans, but they only did this just regular glass with lead. I didn't want any colored glass. The colored glass is all glass lacquer that I painted afterwards, and the one on the right is an embroidery. So I worked with some wonderful women in the ranch outside of a couple of ranches outside of San Miguel, and they loved embroidery. They did embroidery, and they had a hard time finding work. They couldn't find work in town because they couldn't leave their ranches and their children. So this is a wonderful opportunity for us to work together.
Are these some of the same women that Betty Ward worked with down there?
No, they're different people.
Women.
Yeah, they're different women. But the one on the right is called the Breath Nebula. I don't know if that exists or not, but in my mind it does. And Kiki Smith curated a show for the Rubin Museum of Art when it first opened. So she asked artists to design a Tibetan flag, a flag for the outside of the museum in celebration of the opening of the museum. So this piece was the one that I put into that exhibition. Yeah. And this is the Crown Nebula, and the one on the right is the Cat's Eye Nebula. While I was making these, I had spent a lot of time looking at nebulae, but I hadn't really sat down and thought, okay, I'm going to make this nebula that looks just like this. What you do is you just make them, and then you go later. I mean, literally, I didn't find this image of the Cat's Eye Nebula until this year, February, when I was
So after you
looking
made the piece?
Yeah, years after I made the piece, So it's very interesting how that happens. And it's like you tune into a particular radio, some sort of radio, KPFT via las other vias. And then, you just suddenly you're channeling this thing, and then 4 years later you go back and there it is.
And you find it, yeah.
Wow.
You tapped into it.
Yeah, either that or and then you wonder who has the control here, right? Who's running the radio shows here?
The cosmic radio show.
I mean, it's very interesting.
And now, it's major departure here in terms of medium.
Yes, well, yes, I started painting in Mexico. I guess how can you not? It's Mexico, painting permeates Mexico. It's like living and breathing painting and photography. So, of course, I jumped into both, So I photographed a lot of my glass work and used it in this as a...
for the compositions?
No, no,
No?
for actually the imagery.
For the imagery.
Somebody help me out here. I can't think of the word right now. Translated artists here, somebody.
There are details
I
of your
would do
glassworks,
the image and
imagery.
then I would transfer it. Thank
Oh,
you.
an actual
I would actually transfer
photo
it.
transfer.
Photo transfer.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, and I started working with photography that way in my work, in the painting. So the one on the left is called Nawal, which means shapeshifter, and the one on the right is Mariposa Cosmica. And these are Codice 1 and 2, and I just felt that it was more important. They really look more like frescoes. It looks like clay, actually, and the transfers on there look like they're very, old. So it felt to me, I was translating, actually. This came to mind when I was doing this, was the Mandukya Upanishad, and it talks about God being a spit bug. And it made so much sense to me at the time. Because what it is that, you are creating something, and the sphere, that's what it is. And that's what the spit bug does, is he creates one universe after another after another. And, it doesn't have to look like a spit bug. It can be any kind of translation of a spit bug. But it's fascinating when you're thinking of geometry that way, when you're just, that becomes, the sphere is becoming, it's just one more galaxy or one more universe or one more thought, whatever that might be. Yeah. So it's about that. It's about writing about about the universe, essentially, the Codice 1 and 2.
And now we come to the original incarnation
Of this piece.
the Lucy Solidaridad that's on view in the Missing Piece exhibition. And obviously this is a very, you had a lot of personal feelings, obviously, that went into inspiring you to make this piece. So you tell us the story, how it came about.
I wish you'd been there. Yeah, no, it took a long time to actually, it took several years to come to terms with what I was trying to do as far as the brooms were concerned, and what I wanted to do. And in 2004, and this is actually on the DVD, so I won't go into it much, but in 2004...
You're referring to the DVD that's screening with
yes,
the piece
with
in
this,
the gallery. Yes.
in the gallery. But in 2004, I actually got to go to Juarez and meet the mothers. I had been in conversation with Marisela Ortiz, who is the director of the Mujeres de Juarez, from 1999 when I was still living in Berkeley. And I said, I really would like to do something. And that was not long after I did that installation on the border. And I thought, So really I wanted to do, when I started with the idea of the broom and the sweeping, of course that comes from my early childhood too, the sacred act of sweeping. And in India every day they clean the front of their houses, and then they do drawings with rice water to bring in good energy for the house. It's a protection. And in Mexico I think that was pretty much what it used to be too. Now maybe it's not seen that way, but I see it that way. And every day you clean your outside of your home. And in Burma and certain areas, maybe in Borneo, they actually do sweep the temples in the evening. At about 6, the women come out in their beautiful saris or whatever happens to be the traditional clothing, and sweep the outside of the temples so that the energy is cleared for the next day. And they do this every evening at sunset. So it's been a tradition in many ways. So the broom became very important. But my first initial thing was that I wanted to sweep the border. And that hasn't left me yet, but the idea of actually sweeping one side of the border and coming down and sweeping the other side of the border is a shamanic and humble act, actually, and healing. But it just seemed, maybe I had thought about it a little late in life. And so it may change translation. It did change into this, is what that idea happened. So it changed into this and instead of the sweeping aspect of it, but the healing aspect of it, as far as the sweeping goes, that became part of the ritual that I did with some of the women that came down from Juarez to be part of this performance ritual. So that's, you know, how I translated the actual sweeping, which was a sense of performance.
And tell us about the material for the brooms.
The materials are, that was some kind of doing. I went to the market one day in Querétaro and found this black plastic, which was perfect because it's used daily and, you know, for daily objects like making not brooms, purses, caning purses and chairs, baskets, you know, for objects for use for daily, you know, daily wear. And so I that's what we first started working with that. And I had been researching what to make it out of for about a year. I wanted to make it out of a reed, you know, and down there in Mexico where I was, there's a wonderful reed. So I did make a 15-foot broom, but it was impossible. You couldn't really tie a knot into that. You know, I thought I might be able to do it, but it didn't work out. But there were 6 in that room, and there were 6 metates. And the metate, the maker of the metates, that's his gift. You know, that's what he does. He's a great artisan. And he lived about 20 minutes away from me in San Miguel, in a small town outside of San Miguel. So he made these particularly for this and dug the center out, or carved out the center for us to put the cast glass Virgen de Guadalupe in the center.
And these are some other details of the installation.
Yes, and this was in 2004 when I first come back from visiting the women in Juarez. I asked for, people on email. I sent out an action, please take action email of lighting a votive, bringing light to the children that had been murdered, the young girls that had been murdered, as a ritual, and also solidarity, empowerment for the mothers. And please photograph the ritual and send it to me. So that's what you see on the wall here.
The photographs.
Are the photographs of people writing to me and sending me the photographs. And the mothers were very moved when they saw that too, because they know people are reaching out to them from all over the planet, you know. But to see it all in one space, they were very, very moved by that, yeah.
And this is another part of the installation?
Yes, this is the Mayan world tree. And this, again, is the figures, the cast wax figures, all facing one direction. They're women with a cloak of tears that's similar to the 1999 installation.